And we are live. Hello, good people. I have to admit, I'm still a little bit under the weather. I wasn't planning on doing this live stream today, but John basically pulled my leg. Do I say pulled my leg? Yeah, why not? So we're going to talk about politics, and if we have enough time, and etc., we might actually do the topic on sexuality a little bit too. Now, I'd like to thank Crusader Soul and Alicia in the chat. Where will we start? We'll start with socialism, I guess. I haven't seen your video, by the way, Alicia, because I haven't really watched much on YouTube the last few days, what with me being under the weather, so I'm not really sure. Everyone seems to be pretty positive on your last video, but I can't say anything about it. I'm sorry. Hi there, Rin. Rin joined us, and she's AFK, so that's always good.
Hello.
Hey, Rin. So let's start with the topic of politics, the topic of socialism, because apparently a lot of people seem to have different understandings of what it means. Or at least this is the discussion John and I were having a little bit. Am I oversimplifying it, John? Oh, come on. Is John AFK now too? So, yeah, let's talk about politics and socialism. And are there countries where socialism actually works? Welcome back, John. Are there countries where socialism actually works? Can anyone think of any? Or am I going to?
No, I cannot.
A little socialism is not a bad, but it really is bloody genocide when it's total. You see, the thing is, Crusader Soul, I disagree. What a lot of people call a little socialism isn't socialism at all. I know that, for example, in the Western world, we like to think that our healthcare system is an example of socialism, but it really isn't. Well, in most of the Western world, it really isn't. If we look at, for example, countries like the Netherlands, we have social healthcare, but it's not socialistic healthcare. There is a slight difference between social and socialistic. Yeah, but that semantic thing, John, and you could actually talk, you know, that semantic thing is the most important part of it, because that's where people keep falling over. The whole idea.
Sorry, no, because the problem is this: you have got a perfectly valid point about X, when a lot of other people mean Y. And they won't disagree with your point on X, but the linguistic debate about what the word means wastes everybody's time, because, you know, the full no private property, the state owns everything thing, you know, only SJW idiots believe that. The problem is there are people who consider social democracy to be a form of socialism, and whether they're right or wrong, that's what's in their head.
Yeah, but unfortunately, that's also why it's so attractive, why people seem to think that socialism might actually help anyone.
Yeah, but that's my point, because if you say, oh, socialism's terrible under all conditions, and then people are thinking in terms of social democracy and, you know, what we have with government healthcare or whatever, then they're just going to tune out your message, because you're not speaking their language.
I understand, but therein lies the problem, because if we look at people like what's her name, Cortez, and she is a socialist. She's not a social democrat. She is a socialist.
I don't know. She's backpedaling hard at the moment.
I know, which proves my point even more, because then it's, I mean, if it is, yeah, no, I'm sorry, people misunderstood me, then the answer would be, yeah, no, sorry, people misunderstood me. But that's not what she's saying. What she's saying is, no, I didn't mean that. So what did you mean? And then she doesn't really answer.
Yeah, because she does. Most people don't understand their ideologies. That's a fundamental problem with them.
Yeah, but I'm afraid she does.
No, she doesn't. She knows jack shit. Every time she's asked a question, she's clueless.
No.
She's clueless about the answers.
She's clueless about the answers.
But I don't think she's clueless about. I don't think she's clueless about what socialism is. I think she's clueless about how socialism is actually going to help anyone, and that's because.
Well, I'm sorry, but that's the same thing. If you have a belief and you think the belief that's the answer, but you don't know how it would do it, then you don't actually know it.
Yeah, I understand what you mean, and I agree with you. But she is an ideologue.
Yeah.
And her ideology is socialism. It's not social democracy.
Well, as I say, then we get into a semantic argument.
No, not really, because there are differences between those two, and she knows the differences. That's why she's a great.
Yeah, but my point is the term you're using doesn't correlate to many people.
But they do correlate to the people who actually understand what they're on about. That's the problem.
Really? This is what I'm saying.
Look at Bernie
video
Sanders.
today gave a fundamentally different interpretation of the word socialism to the one you spelled out also today. So the question is, if you're both spelling out very clear, definitive definitions of socialism and they're fundamentally at odds, then you are not in agreement. And that is my point. So you can't then talk about socialism without specifying exactly what you mean by it.
But if you look at what Bernie Sanders said, yeah, or if you look, yeah, go on.
No, I'm just, I know nothing about Bernie Sanders.
Okay.
I'm not American. I don't care.
Well, we all live in America nowadays.
No, I mean, seriously. I mean, there was so little factual coming out of the American election coverage.
Yeah, that is true. I could still not. I mean, if people would have been wrong by 10%, 20%, I would have said, you know what? Yeah, okay. But being wrong by nearly 100%, it makes you wonder what those political pundits were doing.
But we got an American here. She'd be far better to place.
True that. True that.
Bernie Sanders. It'd be rude, a Brit and a Dutchman to.
True that. Hi there, the desert pioneer, by the way. And yes, Bernie does seem to be a communist. Rin, are you still there, my dear?
I don't pay that much attention to Bernie Sanders.
No, but I mean, if we look at the politics that Bernie Sanders pushed, and if we look at the politics that's now being pushed by what's her face, Cortez. I keep forgetting her first name. Anyway,
Cortez will do.
Cortez will do. Yeah, that's her last name. But do you recognize any of what they're talking about?
I don't pay attention to Cortez. I mean, she won by very few votes. I mean, she still won, but the reason why she won was because there was a very low voter turnout. I mean, it's pretty much that very few people showed up, therefore she won.
Yeah, but the Democrats are using the fact that she won as how do you call it? A justification to go into extremes?
I don't think that's very realistic Because what would most likely happen is that it would split the Democratic Party. Like it would be like the people who are more, how do I put it, more moderate Democrats to the people who are closer to being socialists. It would not only split the Democratic Party, but it would likely, be helping the Republican Party. So it would help, like I am predicting that Trump is going to win. I predict that Trump is going to win 2020 because of this rift. And who knows, like if like people may not really want to have a socialist in office. So because they might not want a socialist in office, they may vote Republican, votes, third party like Libertarian, or they may just stay at home. It's kind of like the most recent election, the 2016 election. Pretty much half of America didn't vote at all. Like 47% of Americans didn't vote. Then, third party candidates actually did better than usual. And when it comes to the numbers between Trump and Hillary, Hillary got 25.6% of votes. Donald Trump got 25.5% of votes. Hillary Clinton did dramatically worse than Obama, and Trump did slightly worse than Mitt Romney. When it comes to comparing Donald Trump and Mitt Romney, Donald Trump was down by 2 million voters.
What do you think of the idea that if they don't get enough votes, then enough people vote, then it invalidates the election? Like if the candidates who are put forward are so unappealing, it's like, we vote for nobody.
Yeah, but then you don't have anyone.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, I'm not really
because
sure.
Because the problem is the system assumes that the least bad candidate is the best person, whereas if and you don't necessarily get that much say in who gets to stand. I know it's slightly different with American what they call them primaries, but we don't. And it's like, what, if they're all that bad and no one wants to vote for them, well then no one gets to be in charge until they sort themselves out and can actually convince the people they're worthy to run the place. And then they might actually start serving us again for a change.
Considering the American Senate, I'm not really
sure. No, I'm talking generally, Mud. I'm talking anywhere in the world. We have these falling votes, falling turnouts.
We have democracy. Nearly everywhere in the Western world, democracy is failing.
Yeah, and
that's kind of funny because if you look at India, India still has a thriving democracy. I think one of the reasons why in the Western world democracy is failing is because we constantly recognize that our politicians basically tell us what we want to hear, and then once they got voted in, they stop doing what we want them to do. I think this is one of the reasons why everyone in the world is so either 100% in favor of Trump or 100% against him, because he's actually doing what he says.
Well, to me, if the way I view, and I made a video on this. Yeah, I actually did made a video on this, and Sean, you actually left me a comment on it. I think that a good solution for Americans would be to get rid of first past the post and switch over to the alternative votes. The alternative votes is really like 1 for Jill Stein, 2 for Gary Johnson, and 3 for Donald Trump, as opposed to voting for only one person. You know, that's the reason, that's the way more people could vote third party, because I think that people do want to vote third party, but when people do want to vote third party, they get harassed and harangued by both sides. It's like, oh, well, you know, that person would never win, that person would never win. So they are bullied into just, you know, not voting third party, but they still don't want to vote, so they just stay home instead. And I lost my train of thoughts.
Yeah, the thing is, we see it in a lot of European countries as well, though. I mean, voter turnout is going down.
Yeah, but
And
the first past the post system is a fundamental problem here. The problem
yeah,
we've got is the people who can change it are the beneficiaries of it,
yeah,
and
so they don't want
therefore
to change it.
they don't want to change it because, by definition, they'd won under the first past the post system. Why would they then get rid of it? And they had a referendum here, and the way they did it is they just asked such a bad question that no one was interested. And then they said, oh, look, people don't want it. Well, you can frame a referendum question any way to get the result you want, any way you want.
Yeah. It's kind of funny because if we look in Europe, hell, even in the Netherlands, D66 was the political party who fought tooth and nail to have referenda in the Netherlands. And then we had a few, and all of them didn't turn out as the way the political elite had wanted. And now they're talking about how they want to abolish referenda because it doesn't work
course,
anyway.
because they don't like your answers. And that's the fundamental problem. This is what I'm saying. It's like we need an option to say, none of you. We need an option to turn around and say, but you know, we want better candidates.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Because at the moment it's like in Britain. I live in a seat which has got a Conservative. So if I vote for another party, that splits the other party vote. So do I vote for Labour, who are second, even though I don't want Labour?
Yeah.
And that goes on a lot because, you know, as Rin says, if you can vote for your preferred candidate and then you trickle your vote down to the person you end up in our system voting for anyway, then at least you get to show who you would have voted, who you really want.
Yeah, it's difficult, strange. I like to think that for example, if I go back to the referenda, I really was in favor of the referenda. I didn't really care that much because I already knew how it would hang out.
But again, who sets the question? Who?
No, it's even worse. It's not even who sets the question. Even if they set a question and they do get a clear answer, they ignore it. And indeed, what Crusader Soul says, how many of the VVD in the Netherlands are caught lying and in corruption? And people basically move on. It's no longer a big deal. I mean, we had a minister. Yeah, I think it was a minister, state secretary minister. I think it was a minister lying about what he heard Putin say in a certain meeting. And how do we know he lied about it? Because he wasn't even there.
Oh, for goodness sake.
And I'm like, these people represent us. What the fuck is wrong with them?
Yeah. But, sorry, Sam, yeah?
I had actually a discussion today with someone because we were talking a little bit about politics in Poland, but that exactly shows also what the conversation is about. So there's a program in Poland that basically gives you 500 zloty if you have a child, second and third, yeah, more than one child. And you don't have to take it if you don't want it, but you can. And people are abusing that system, obviously. And I had a conversation with someone, and And it shows me how we got used to politicians cheating, lying, and being not responsible. Because I blame, I think it's a complicated issue, and I blame, obviously women who will have children just for money. I think there is really something seriously wrong with you if you do that. But I also do blame our politicians who are set up the system that is so easily abused. And person I was talking to, well, I'm not sure if I misunderstood that person, but with the conversation I got was like, yeah, I blame those mothers. I blame those mothers because they abuse the system. It's like when you leave your car open, it's not your fault, it's getting stolen, but still the person who stole did the bad thing. When I'm saying, okay, the thing is that the politicians are being paid to make, to basically put things into work, and they should protect those legislations. But my point is that a lot of people that I talk in Poland, from Poland lately, they don't. There are people who will be very angry with politicians, but there are starting also to be people indeed who are like, who cares? It's be bad. No matter what we choose and no matter what we say, it's a politician. It will be bad. And I kind of see the same thing here when people are basically saying, yeah, but that's politicians. That's all they do.
Yeah.
We lost this really being outraged about politicians lying. I think partly because it has been going on for so long.
No, it's not even that though. It's human nature. It's that whole thing. Power corrupts. People in a position where they can advantage themselves, amongst all the people who could potentially do that, there will be some who succumb. And the problem is if we look at, I don't know how many politicians you've got. We've got 650. And out of those 650, if you find 10 with the hand in the till, well, that's 10. But you don't know which 10.
Yeah.
But there will be 10. You with me? It's like, yeah, okay. So some of them give in to temptation. What's worse, if they, it's like the old, we had a lot of police corruption, and the Vice Squad in Soho in the 60s and 70s was really notorious for it, because everyone's doing it, and it builds a culture where the people coming in are sort of introduced to it and almost coerced to be as culpable as everybody else.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
And it's like, well, no shit. There's money involved. People are corrupt when money is involved. What a surprise.
Yeah, of course, but it's also like we don't see the way anymore. What could we do about those politicians? Because, well, like I can obviously talk about my generation. Again, we've been raised in a world when we had basically everything, even though we think we didn't, because I didn't have an internet, I didn't have a game. So people from my generation still think like we didn't have like what those children have right now. And it's true, but we still had actually most of the things, and we had things needed. And it's like being those weak people who create bad times, because we don't have it in us, or at least I don't see it to have it in us to really feel, to speak up, to do something about this. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong on that one, but that's, yeah, the feeling I get more and more, to be honest, lately.
But I think one of the problems is like, I cannot speak for the Netherlands, but in Britain, politicians have gone through different cultures. So it used to be sort of like, they didn't used to get paid. You had to be of independent means, way back to 300 years ago. And so it was a service.
Yeah. And that's how it should be.
Yeah. And then you had the political people who had genuine political fervor, for good or ill. Now it's a career. People do political science in university. They never have joined the real world. They've got no experience of anything other than politics. And it's literally how they earn their living. No more, no less.
Yeah, there is something seriously wrong with our political system. And this is true just about everywhere in the Western world. And this is why they are so...
But all systems are prone. It's like Jordan Peterson talks about this in his say, you know, it's like all systems, you get hierarchy, and all hierarchies tend to tyrannies. And so you perpetually have to be improving it, resisting the corruption. And the politics is just the same.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, you can't say, oh, we've set up a great system. That's it. Because the minute you've set up your great system, it will, well, entropy will set in and it'll degenerate. And then you have to have some kind of revision. The problem is the corruption process is very gradual, so there's no clear point where it goes over a line. Because if you look at last year, it was just a little bit not so bad, and the year before just a little bit not so bad. But when you look back 50 years, you say, oh, well, it was a lot better back then.
Well, if I take the Netherlands as an example again, I mean, don't get me wrong. The Netherlands has one very clear populistic political party. And this is bullshit, because I think all political parties are populistic, because you get a vote based on how popular you are. You don't get a vote based on how good you are. And the right-wing populists in the Netherlands, of course, is PVV. And the funny thing about the PVV is that it's not democratic, it's not right-wing, and yeah, you could call it populist, but then again, it's just as populist as all the other political parties.
But here's the thing, right? Okay, so
they don't want to work with them.
Why? Here's the thing, though. Populism as a denigration is false, because all parties should be populist.
Well, they are.
No, by definition, because populist just means doing what the people want.
Yeah. If you're not a populist, you get a vote.
That's a job.
But yeah, so no one wants to work together with Geert Wilders, who basically is now the second part. Well, not Geert. Yeah, well, actually, Geert Wilders is a second party, because the PVV doesn't have members. It's basically his party. He's the captain on the ship, which is, in all fairness to me, that's very anti-democratic. But at the same time,
the problem is this. Okay, so let's consider the British system. We have. I'll take the Conservative Party because it's clearer on that one. Okay, you got the Conservative Party, and it's got constituency parties, one for each constituency. So there's 650 of those, ignoring the ones in Northern Ireland, because anyway. So say there's just over 600 constituency parties, and they're full of members, and those members choose the candidate, etc. Then MPs go to Parliament, voted in by the public. Then the leader of the party is only chosen by the MPs.
Yeah.
So and then when the Prime Minister, like we have at the moment, decide to set her policies, you've got one person deciding what to do, as we saw with the her policy on the EU negotiations.
Yeah.
And it's I'm the leader, take it or leave it. That is what's the word? That's dictatorship.
It is, yeah.
Dictatorship.
But then again, it already got recognised by several conservatives who then basically said...
No, but the point is that has been the system. I've been really pissed off with this system for decades, because it's so bloody obvious that, in fact, for all the veneer of democracy, you have a handful of people who we don't get any direct say in choosing, unilaterally deciding what to do in a take it or leave it. and you get till the next parliamentary elections to even make a reaction to that.
Yeah, but it's weird. And I mean, if we look at it in a slightly larger scope, this is how we got the European Union as well. I mean, it started out as a good idea, and then politicians became corrupt.
No, but it's not. The problem with the European Union isn't that politicians became corrupt. It's that it got set up as an extra democratic system.
Well, it was supposed to be part of the democratic system, but
Well, no, because here's the problem. When it was first set up, it was this iron and steel and coal federation or something. So it was purely a trade organization.
Yes. Well,
When it was first set up in the 1950s,
it was a trade. It was an economic
trade. Okay.
Yeah.
So you can happily have national governments assign people to go and participate, and it has evolved. Some would say according to a plan ever since, but no one has ever reassessed how it should be structured and people should be chosen to reflect the fundamental advances in what its what responsibilities and powers it has. So now you have the European Commission, which consists of people appointed by governments setting policy for the European Union. That's not democratic.
I'm sorry, what is it? Yes. I'm sorry, mate. Yeah. But the thing is, it started, if we look at the European Union, it started out as an economic get-together, basically.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. And the problem is it's evolved, but there's been no analysis of how to run it.
But the thing
in parallel
is,
with how it's evolved.
But the thing is, if we look at the EEC, yeah, so basically the precursor to the European...
it was the EEC when we joined in the 70s.
It didn't have a ruling body.
Yeah, because it was still economic.
It was the ministers of the different countries that ran it, basically. But if we look at the EU now, it has a very strong central government, so to speak.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying, because it was just imposed. It wasn't. There was no fundamental analysis and an agreement of the peoples of Europe to do that. It was just done.
Yeah, I'm not really. How do I say this? The problem with the current EU is that it has no political basis in Europe.
Yeah, it's not democratic. It has no legitimacy.
But at the same time, they dictate.
It's a tail wagging the dog.
Supposed to happen in Europe.
Yeah, it's a tail wagging the dog. That's what I'm saying. It's the executive who are unelected, unaccountable, who get to set the policies and the laws.
And this in itself is well, it's problematic. I hate that word, but
I'm triggered.
Yes, I read him, Agnieszka. I'm sorry, I keep getting distracted. My bad. No, but this is the thing, though. When we look at, for example, the current situation in the European Union, we have politicians who actually speak out against democracy because it doesn't suit their narrative.
Yeah.
And
the question is, who are they?
Well, if for example we take the Netherlands, Rutte, who is the prime minister, he speaks out against democracy. and people tend not to see it because we don't really pay attention, but he does. And if we look at the UK, Theresa May speaks out against democracy.
Oh yeah, but
nobody seems to
our
pick up on
conservatives
that.
always have. That's why I used to be such a leftist.
Yeah, well,
because I came of political age under 18 years at the start of 18 years of conservatism, and it was quite obvious that the democracy had nothing to do with it.
yeah.
But the left then used to be for, getting rid of government, not for having lots and lots and lots more of it.
Yeah, but that's the thing, though. The left always speaks on how big government is bad, and the first thing
Because
they do
there
is
are
implement more.
No, because there are two fundamentally opposite strains of the left. There's the authoritarian left and there's the anti-authoritarian left. Just as there are people on the right who are authoritarian and people on the right who are anti-authoritarian. And the difference that we should unite along our attitude to authoritarianism, not our attitude to bloody economics, because the economics is irrelevant if the authoritarians get in charge.
Yeah, I'm not really sure if I can see it like that. The thing is, maybe I'm not seeing it because we haven't seen it for a long time. Because basically, nearly all politicians have become authoritarian.
Yeah, I'm not talking about politicians. I'm not about politicians. I'm not about political party. I'm talking about us. Us, we the people.
Yeah, but we the people don't have a say anymore.
Yeah, and if we're here talking and we are agreeing with people, disagreeing with people, my attitude is we should agree along the authoritarian, anti-authoritarian axis, not upon the left-right axis.
Yeah, true that. But in all fairness, I'm hard pressed in Europe to see any political party that isn't left. Because all political parties.
No, but again, you see, it's a question of what you mean. Left and right don't even mean anything anymore.
No, there is. Well, it's
because what are you measuring by left and right? It used to be economic, then social, then there are lots of other things you can calibrate it by.
Yeah, no, you got a point there. But I mean, everyone calls, going back to the PVV, everyone calls Geert Wilders a right wing or extreme right.
Yeah, because it's the same with Tommy Robinson, because he's opposed to immigration and the destruction of our culture. Some of it just call it sanity.
Yeah, but if we look at what his political stances are, except for yes, we should reduce the amount of Muslims in the country. That's his point. I'm not saying yes, we should, but that's his point. That is the only thing that people focus on. But in everything else, he's in favor of social healthcare. He's in favor
because
of
most
social
people
medicine.
are. Because most people are, and this is the problem. Yeah. Because people are saying, "Oh, this one issue determines your political position," and it's not.
No, that's true. I never understood that to begin with.
And this is my point. It's like, someone like Alicia is, she's got a very American perspective. So she's against things like social healthcare. Fine. Okay. That suits her culture. And our culture is the opposite.
Well, in all fairness, I work in healthcare and I'm against social healthcare.
No. But that whether that's true or not, that's not my point. But my point is but on what I consider to be the important stuff, we fundamentally agree.
Yeah.
Because that's just detail to me.
Mm-hmm.
How you organise your healthcare, that can be left till later. It's the fundamental freedoms. It's a fundamental relationship between the citizen and the state that's important. Not the minutiae organising this, that, or the other.
Yeah. I never understood how our Western societies have moved so far from its original, how do you call it? Its original identifying markers. Let's call it.
But there was no original. This is the problem. It's like it's the same as evolution, and it's what I was saying before about the political corrupt changes. There are no significant marking points. When you're at any point in time, you don't see the change. Change is only obvious over time when you look backwards and you say, oh, that far enough behind was fundamentally different from today.
Yeah,
but at the time, very little is changing.
But that's basically a slippery slope argument, and I'm not saying you're incorrect.
It's not a slippery slope argument. It's saying, you know, it's like all the people who rail against the state, the side of the state, the side of government, have got the point is you have to understand why it got this way, how it got this way, and no one set out to say we're going to have a huge state and it's going to take all these taxes. It was one decision at a time to do this because we need to, do this because it's right to do this because that's a good thing. Unfortunately, when you make lots and lots and lots of little changes, the chances are the whole is not very optimal. Just as, do you know there's a nerve in the giraffe?
Yeah, the neck.
Yeah. Okay. And it goes, what is it, 20 feet?
Yeah, it goes down and back up.
And
it goes
up only to go a few inches in the head, but it goes all the way down, round the heart and back up the neck. Because that's what happens when you make little changes one by one without any plan. Yeah. And if you have a system like ours, there was never a perfect time. We never had any of these grand concepts. It's just that we had all these little shifts and changes, and the result is an untidy mess. It's sprawling, it's inefficient, it doesn't make sense. Because of course not, because no one would ever design it this way. But it wasn't designed. It just came about through gradual change, evolution. And so,
but the thing is, and you're correct, but we cannot, well, hide might sound wrong, but I'm going to say hide. We cannot hide behind its gradual change. At a certain point in time, we have to recognize where we are and say, is this what we want?
I know, but that's a different subject. You see, you were talking about, because no one has done that. I agree with you, that's what we need to do, but no one has done that.
And therein lies the problem.
Yeah, but that's a different conversation, because there never was a great point and then things went wrong. In fact, things have always got better. And we know this because we live in the wealthiest, freest
we used to
society. No, we still do. So far. If I look at the standard of living of people today in my country compared to 30 years ago, insanely better.
Yeah, but for the first time, well, not now for the first time. It's a little bit. I think maybe a decade ago. For the first time, we are seeing a world that isn't improving. We are seeing a world.
You're wrong. You are wrong.
No.
You are wrong. Listen to Steven Pinker and Jordan Peterson. The science, the evidence is crystal clear. The world is getting dramatically better. Dramatically.
Yeah, but I'm not talking about the world. I'm talking about our societies. If we look in the Netherlands, in the last 10 years, I've been earning more money than I have in the 30 years before that.
Mm-hmm.
But if I look at my exposable income, it's actually gone down a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So our system isn't improving our life anymore. There are certain improvements for sure, But on average, we are going backwards now. We're not
but here's the thing,
moving
okay?
forward.
It is a historical anomaly that people's lives perpetually improved across the board. For nearly all of history, most people's lives never changed. Then we hit the disruption of the agricultural and industrial revolutions, and all of a sudden so much more wealth was generated. And our Western societies have ossified so that that's no longer happening.
Yeah.
And you know, and I heard 40 years ago how the balance of trade deficit was unsustainable, and 40 years later of it being unsustainable, we're still somehow struggling on. But of course we're getting worse because our balance of trade deficit's been in shit for 40 years. But no one wants to address it because they don't have to, because somehow we're smoke and mirroring it through.
But that's the thing, though, and I'm going to respond.
And while you are right, that on a micro level, you say, "Oh yeah, well things are." I'm sorry, you know. Even so, we are so affluent now. It's all relative.
Well, everything is always relative. That's not the point. But
No,
I'm going to respond
it's
to
all
Davey.
relative.
I'm going to respond to Davey for a second because he did ask me something. Do I think it has anything to do with the European Union? And I'm going to say yes, but because it's not just the European Union, as Alicia said as well, inflation and central banks are also a large part of the problem. And funny enough, one of the main reasons for inflation is the push for how do you call it? Minimum wages. Because that's the one thing a lot of people seem to constantly disagree. No, not disagree. Misunderstand. Minimum wages is what's pushing inflation. And the only one who actually benefits from minimum wages and inflation are the super rich and the banks.
You see, there's a fundamental problem here. One of the biggest problems of capitalism is dealing with social cost. There are two fundamental social costs. The first is pollution, the environmental social cost.
Yeah.
The second is pay. If, as we do, we live in states, countries, and that includes the United States, where people on low incomes get government subsidy, all that happens with low wages is the taxpayer subsidize private profit. Because you could pay somebody low and you know the taxpayer will pick up the bill, and so you make a profit because you're not paying somebody, and the rest of us pay for it. And that is what, and so the problem is that's just as bad as the minimum wage, because you just got two sides of the same fundamental problem. Because at the end of the day, somebody needs to eat and they need a house, and somebody's got to pay for it. And if the minimum wage it doesn't exist and they're not being paid, then the taxpayer picks up the tab.
No, that's in all fairness, that's not really how it would have worked.
What do you mean that's not? That is exactly how it does work.
No, it's not. And I'm going to explain to you why it's not. If we're going to say, okay, you're going to need to be earning a minimum wage, that's going to be based on something. What that does is it increases the other costs. Because once you have more money, I can ask more money for the same thing.
Yeah,
and that's what
I'm not disputing what you say about the minimum wage. I'm just saying the alternative is just as bad, because the taxpayer ends up picking up the bill, and that is also an overhead that has to be dealt with.
I'm not sure I agree with you on that one.
You're saying that if you're saying that's like in our country we have something called the taxpayers working credit or something. Working credit. And if somebody is working and they don't have enough money, they get the government to give them more money.
Mm-hmm.
That's what happens when people aren't paid enough.
No, that's what happens when prices go up.
No, that's what happens when people aren't paid enough.
Yeah, again, John, no, you're not.
I'm not wrong. It's what happens. If someone doesn't earn enough money, they get government assistance.
No, it started the other way around. It really did. At the beginning, people were earning a certain amount of money, yeah, and with that money, they had to buy food and pay for shelter, etc., etc., etc. Then government got influenced by it, and it started demanding certain minimum pays, etc., etc., etc.
No, forget the minimum wage.
Let me finish, please. Let me finish, because there is way more to it, but it starts there. Then government starts trying to help people do better. And because they are doing all these things to help people, on the other hand, people are recognizing, oh, wait, so now I can ask more for the same service.
Yes, I know. I'm not arguing with you about that. I've told you I agree.
So this is the main cause of inflation.
No, I'm not talking about that.
Then why do you say no?
I said that is only half the problem. The other side is if you don't have a minimum wage, okay, no minimum wage, there isn't one. People will not earn enough to live, and the taxpayer pays through government benefits.
No.
And
I'm going to explain to you why that does not have to be the case. If we look at the Netherlands...
I'm not talking about has to be the case. I'm talking actually, factually, is the case.
John, it might be now. That doesn't mean it's how it's supposed to be. It's how it's been set up to be. So let me explain my point. After the Second World War, Europe had to be rebuilt. Yeah? So houses were built and whatnot. Government basically didn't put a lot of pressure on minimum wage, but they did put a lot of pressure on maximum house pricing.
Okay.
That meant that people were always able to afford a house. Now, in the 60s, I'm doing this by heart, so I might be wrong in my dates, but in the 60s in the Netherlands, government let go of this rent control, because basically that's what it was.
Okay. We've never had that. We've never had these things.
Well, fair enough, but let me finish my point. Government ended rent control.
Okay.
So what happened is that even social housing companies started increasing the rents continuously. At this point in time, there are people in the Netherlands who will actually tell you that there's a housing shortage in the Netherlands.
Mm-hmm.
There is not. There is an affordable housing shortage because houses have become too fucking expensive. And why have they become too expensive? Because they have been inflating the prices because they could get away with it. And instead of the government saying, okay, you know what, this is the free market, shit happens, whatever, the government started saying, okay, you know what, this is a problem, we'll help pay for it, which drives the prices up even further. Now, can I prove this? Yes, I can. And here is the proof. Renting a house in the Netherlands is ridiculously expensive.
Mm-hmm.
Buying a house is a lot cheaper. That is weird. So how come buying a house is so much cheaper? Because we had the credit crunch in 2008. Banks stopped loaning out as much money as they used to, so people couldn't afford expensive houses. What did that do with the house prices? They went down. All except rented houses because those were protected, because people that can't afford the rent will get government handouts.
Mm-hmm.
So now buying a house per square meter is almost half as expensive as renting a house.
Mm-hmm.
Buying a house is market-based, renting a house is government-based.
Mm-hmm.
Funny enough, the government says, okay, but you're not allowed to buy a house if your income is below a certain point. And because of that, I live in a house nearly 3 times as big as my brother. He pays 450 euro roughly in rent. And I pay 350 euro in mortgage.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the problem. Protectionism destroying.
None of that applies to my argument. None of that is what I'm talking about. You are talking about specific issues with specific causes and specific meaning. I am not. I am making a general case.
I
am not talking about housing benefits subsidies. I
can make this case in housing. I can make this case in food. I can make this case in medicine. I can make this case in healthcare, because they all follow the same pattern. That's the problem.
Okay. Except that we didn't have, I mean, yes, we had, Davey was saying about council tax, which he didn't even get introduced till the council houses was the 1980s. After the war, we didn't have any of those things you were talking about you had in the Netherlands. The point is that people earn their money, and if they don't have enough money to live, they can apply for government subsidy. If they get paid less, then the government will pick up the shortfall, irrespective of what it's for. And it's all right saying, oh, well, you know, it's all the fault of this, that, the other. I don't see it. I really don't.
No, but I understand what you're saying, but they are all linked to the same thing. As soon as government starts regulating the market...
No, but I'm not talking about when the government's regulated the market, irrespective of no regulation. No, I'm not. No, I am not.
Okay, so if someone can't afford it, the government will help pay.
You said regulate the market. That means something completely different.
No, that's still regulating the market.
Not regulate the market. Those are two different things.
John, I hope I'm on point, because I need to check the little one so often that I'm a little bit difficult to follow. But here is the thing. By making the situation when the government will say, okay, if you cannot afford it, we will give you money, because you need to live somewhere. They actually are in a way they are regulating the market, because they create the situation when the house still will.
No, they're subsidizing it. They're not regulating it. Regulation is a policy.
John, let me finish, please. Let me finish what I want to say, because I really do like you, mate, but you interrupt me. Sorry, my English maybe is not the best, but let me please finish. The thing is that basically, if I cannot afford the house, neither to pay or rent the house, and the government is going to pay me money because they say you don't earn enough. They don't say the houses are too expensive. They say you don't earn enough, therefore I'm going to pay you money. In a way, they are regulating the market, because that means that me and people like me are still going to get the houses. It was like that. I think it was in Poland. Now I don't remember when they bought. Basically, when they built, that was years ago. They built a lot of really expensive flats, and because they were really expensive, it wasn't a social housing or anything. It was too expensive. People actually in this area couldn't easily afford it. So because no one could or wanted afford it there, they basically had to put the price lower to make it more attractive. But the government creates the situation when you do not need to make your houses more attractive price-wise, because, well, the government will take care that you will get the house.
Yeah,
Therefore,
the word
price
is not regulate.
But what's
word
happening is
not regulate. Regulate means something specific. It is a policy. It is an edict which people have to follow. And so you can't say they regulate.
Because
John,
of what they're doing, they're regulating it.
They
John,
not regulate. It is
John,
not regulate.
John, if I know you can't afford something you need, be it healthcare, be it food, be it housing. Yeah?
It's not regulate. Regulate is subsidized. Thank you.
Let me finish my point. And yes, I know, ludicrous, it's subsidized. But
that's all I'm asking, that you use the right terminology, because it matters.
John, by subsidizing certain patterns, I'm making sure those patterns keep existing. And that in itself is influencing it and regulating it.
Yeah, but regulation is a fundamental set
I'm not
of
saying
policy.
regulation, I'm saying regulating.
No. Regulating is regulating our deliberate policies to produce deliberate outcomes.
But if I subsidize something, then that's deliberate, is it not?
No, because regulating is with an objective in mind.
So if I subsidize your housing, do I not talk about how I'm regulating that you are still able to afford certain houses that you normally wouldn't be able to?
No, that is not the correct use of the word.
Yeah, now we're talking about semantics again.
Yeah, exactly, but it matters, because talking about government regulation, government regulating behavior is deliberate acts with specific goals in mind, with set goals in mind, and having like you say. But here's the thing. Okay, you're saying, okay, so we have this problem in this country with all the immigrants. It's driving up rents. At the same time, competition for jobs is pushing down prices, wages. So people are struggling to meet their rents. And you're saying, all right, well, the government will subsidize your rent. Sometimes, but a lot of the tax credits are nothing to do with how you spend the money. They're not specifically to give you more money because rents are high. They're to give you more money because you don't have enough money.
No, John, they give you more money, yeah, because you can then afford to live in whatever. I'm going to use housing as an example. This is
no, but this is my point. It's not about specific markets.
Yeah,
it's
but
about
I'm going
general...
to use this.
Okay, so let's suppose you get rid of the minimum wage.
I'm trying to focus, yeah? We can talk about how it's not about housing prices, fair enough. But as soon as the government starts helping people pay their rent,
okay, so you were saying
prices go up.
You were saying that the minimum wage drives inflation. I agree. And I said the problem is that if you allow wages to fall, the government will end up paying more benefit. You haven't argued that point. All you've argued about is how
I'm trying to make
the money is a problem. That's my point. My point is that if you don't have minimum wages, you just end up with more government benefit.
I'm trying to make you see that that's not correct. The only
how you're not arguing that point. You're arguing.
I am. I'm trying to, but you're interrupting me.
No, I'm sorry. You're arguing that if the government gives people money, it drives up housing prices or whatever. Fine, irrelevant.
All prices, actually, all prices.
Irrelevant. That's not my point. That is not what I'm saying.
It is a two-way street.
minimum wages.
It's a two-way street, John. It's not just that when government does this, it increases the prices. But if government wouldn't do this, prices would go down. Because in all fairness, when
you're saying,
let me finish my point, please, John. Let me finish my point. When I bought this house, it was, I bought it for about 100,000 euro. Now it's about 125,000 euro. But I haven't really changed anything in the house. So why is it suddenly, and the government says it's 150,000 euros, so I have to pay taxes.
What's this got to do with anything I was talking about?
I'm trying to make my point. Let me finish, please. The thing is that the price increase is based on two things. The money that people have and the necessity of the good, be it a house, be it food, be it healthcare, it doesn't matter. The money that people have is a very strong driving factor. And that is what inflation is.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
The more money you have, the less value your money has.
Yeah.
And the only answer government has been providing to try and make everything available is throw more money at it, which in itself causes more inflation, which is then going to be answered by throwing more money at it, which causes inflation, which is going to be... The true thing is, or the better solution would be like, okay, you know what? We're going to... You want to pay someone less? Okay, you're going to pay someone less. That means at certain point of time, houses will become empty. Food will not be sold. We will have an unhealthy market. We already have, and I'm using housing as a great example in the Netherlands, we already have an unhealthy house market. But people ignore that because that's not what we're being told. And why are they getting away with not telling us the truth? Because government jumps in when it becomes difficult.
Okay. And my point was that if you cut the minimum wage, remove the minimum wage, government will jump in and spend all that extra money. And you have literally just agreed with my whole bloody point after arguing for an hour.
But the reason why they do that...
I don't care what the reason is. I was just saying that if you cut minimum wages, the problem is that government will then spend more in benefits.
But they shouldn't. And that's the problem.
Fine. But you didn't say that. You said I was wrong. But I'm saying...
I'm saying that part of the problem of inflation is government spending more money. And when the market prices people out of certain goods, government
jumps arguing to make those the counter side to a
that's something government shouldn't do.
No, I was arguing the counter side to the cut in minimum wage and merely stating that it would result in increased government subsidy of the poor. And
no, it shouldn't.
Nothing you have said has disagreed with. You might not like that, but you're not saying
because by doing so, government is forcing...
I'm not arguing that. I'm saying it will happen. I'm not saying it should. I am merely saying it will happen.
And I'm saying it shouldn't. And how
Fine, but you didn't argue it shouldn't. You told me I was wrong.
No, I did argue it shouldn't. I've been trying to explain to you why it shouldn't.
Fine, but you didn't say it's in context.
No, John, can I be a total asshole? I'm really sorry. But I think he did try to argue that, but there is tremendous amount of time when he cannot finish his points.
Sorry, because I never heard him say, you are right, but they shouldn't. And if he'd said you are right, but they shouldn't, I'd have agreed, and we wouldn't have talked for the last
But
hour.
why? Yeah, duh.
Because all I said was, if you cut the minimum wage, the problem is government will spend more on benefit. That's all I said. And instead of agreeing with that and then saying, but they shouldn't.
No, I'm not saying government will. I'm saying government will because they force the system.
But you didn't. You said, no, you're wrong. You said you are wrong.
Yes.
You told me, you were telling me why I was wrong, and all I was doing is pointing out a fact.
Okay, I'm going to give a different example, and I'm going to stay in housing because housing is.
I'm not disagreeing with you. You're not disagreeing with me. You just failed to agree with me by actually saying yes, and this is why it's a problem.
So that's why I'm saying government shouldn't do it.
But you didn't say that. You told me I was wrong. You told me I was wrong.
I've said several times that government shouldn't do this. I actually have.
No, I'm sorry.
That's why my example.
I said that if you cut minimum wages, government will end up spending more in benefit, and that is the other side. And you never once acknowledged that point.
But that's why I came.
I don't care why you didn't say it. I'm not psychic.
Yeah, I have.
You said you're wrong. You said many times.
I actually said both things. You said he's wrong on some things. Yeah, I said he's wrong, but you tried to argue.
I am wrong. I strictly said that the government would spend more on benefit. That's all I said, and you said you are wrong, and I will tell you why.
Yeah, but then he also couldn't tell his story.
No, because he wasn't. No, son, because he wasn't saying I was wrong. He's now saying I was right, but that the government shouldn't do it. And I agree that the government shouldn't do it, but that isn't what Mod said. So how can I argue against a point he doesn't make?
I did say government shouldn't do it because government is causing inflation.
No, but you. Oh, goodness sake!
Did I not say that?
No, you told me I was wrong to say that the government would, not what I want, but purely would, as a prediction, spend more money on benefit.
Yes, and that's part of the problem. And by that,
but you never said that.
Yeah, I did.
No,
he did.
John, I did.
He didn't. Listen to it back. Listen to it back.
Yeah, I will. That's the main reason why renting a house in the Netherlands is so much more expensive than buying a house. Because of government involvement. And at the same time, government is putting limits on people being allowed to buy houses. So basically forcing people to go into rented housing.
Someone is asking, can we go back to the danger of socialism?
Can we go back to the danger of socialism? Yeah, sure. Yeah, Modwin and John talking. We tend to do that a lot, High Desert. We tend to do that a lot. But yeah, no, back to the problem with socialism. If we look at what socialism has brought, basically there hasn't been a country where socialism has worked. But it's kind of funny because people often seem to think socialism is a great thing. The thing with socialism in itself is that it promises a lot of good, but it always turns out to be authoritarian because it can't otherwise achieve those goods they promise. And once they turn authoritarian, there is no going back. Now, this is something I agree with John. Changes are incremental but are slow. But once the changes start happening, people seem to forget where they come from. And this in itself hurts our society. Now, I know it's easy to talk about countries like Venezuela, even though people will then always go, yeah, but this is not true socialism. But there hasn't been a country in the world where socialism has worked. But it seems that I'm now the only one talking.
No, sir, because I thought you still were talking.
The problem with socialism is because it is built off of theft. You cannot create a good society by starting it with something so bad. Well, you know, Alicia, this is true. And I remember that in the Americas, in the colonies, I forgot the name. I remember the story, but whether they basically said, okay, everyone eats, and then people started not to work hard anymore, And then they basically changed the rule: if you don't work, you don't eat. And that's the difference between socialism and meritocracy. And I know that people like to think that the opposite of socialism is capitalism, but that's not really true. The opposite of socialism is meritocracy. Was that Jamestown? I think it was, yeah. See, I'm not making it up. I'm sorry, guys. I think John is still a little bit, how do I say this? Peeved. Socialism is a product of capitalism. Socialism is a product of rampant capitalism. Yeah, I can see that. No, okay, Alicia, why do you disagree with socialism being a product of capitalism? Mercantilism. I so wish you would join us so you could say what you want to say, because I'm really curious. Mercantilism is based on one pie. Okay, capitalism makes thousands of pies. Yeah, that's. I think I understand what you mean. It's the zero-sum game marketing or economic idea. There's only so much to go around, and therefore, if everything goes to one person, no one else gets anything. That's basically what mercantilism is based on, and that's basically what socialism is based on, and that's not what capitalism is based on. Capitalism says there's an unlimited supply, and I mean, no, there is a limited supply, but that supply increases based on the technologies we use or the work we do. But I also agree with John the Bemused. Socialism is only not socialism. Socialism is a product of capitalism, because socialism was a response to crony capitalism. But if we look at the begin phases of capitalism, yes, free market capitalism drives price down, mercantilism drives prices up, as does socialism and communism. They are great at driving up prices. This is why our healthcare system is so fucking expensive, because we try to socialize it. And at the same time, we protect the pharma industry so they can ask what they want. There is... The thing is, people still think that we live in a world with a free market, but we don't. But you won't get rid... John, come on, you can talk. What are you saying? You won't get rid of socialism unless we understand how it is produced by the wealth of capitalism. Come on, make your point.
Essentially, people keep saying, why does socialism keep coming back? It comes back because it is perpetually produced in reaction. It might be maladaptive, it might be incorrect, it might be all sorts of bad things, but it keeps coming back because the wealth of capitalism makes it possible. It is only possible to conceive of redistributing wealth if you have wealth to redistribute. It is only possible to think of the necessity of redistributing wealth if you have massive inequalities of wealth. Both of these are natural products of capitalism. I'm not saying they're bad, I'm just saying they exist. And
I agree with you on that.
And you have a lot of people, parasites we could call them, non-productive people, intellectuals who go to university, they are educated in the loosest sense of the word. They have far too much time on their hands, and they can be very idealistic without ever having the slightest acquaintance with practicalities of the real world. And they look at various things, they have a simplistic understanding, and they say, oh, so the solution is socialism. And they will keep coming to the same false conclusion because all the necessary conditions for that train of thought still persist. And as long as they persist, the thought will reproduce.
I'm not really sure if I 100% agree with you on that last bit, though. The thing is that I do agree with you that socialism grows because of inequality. People don't understand inequality.
Okay. Who are the people pushing socialists? Are they the working people?
No.
They are the intelligentsia.
Yeah.
They are the intellectuals. They are your media and all those sorts of people who've done these social science degrees or whatever.
No, I agree.
Arts degrees. And these are the people who are basically seeing 2 and 2 are making 82 and a bit. And they will perpetually keep doing so. And I know Alicia disagrees with you, but the point is why have you got so many commies in California? Because it's not the lack of wealth that's creating these people. It is a surfeit of wealth that is creating these people.
Yeah, and
these people exist in wealthy countries, not in poor ones.
This is true. I totally agree with you on that. And California is a great example of that because it used to be the 5th economy in the world, and it has been socialistic, communistic for the last, let's say, 70 years, 80 years, and it's been going downhill ever since. I can still remember, I read up on it not too long ago, how California didn't want to take in Vietnamese refugees because the Vietnamese refugees were very much against communism.
Huh.
Yeah.
They're totally okay with taking in refugees from the Hispanic world who will do what they want, but they weren't okay with taking in refugees from countries that suffered under communism because, yeah. I'm trying to do 3 things at the same time now. I'm sorry. I need to focus a little bit. The thing is that socialism did came out of Europe. Yes, I agree with you on that. But I also, Alicia, but I also agree with John that socialism comes out of inequality. I've said this a few times before, but socialists are basically trying to create a new elite class with them as the new elite. It's not about lifting up the workers, because if it were about lifting up the workers, then it wouldn't fail constantly. It's about control. It's about totalitarianism. It's about becoming the new gentry. And the thing is, if we look at poor countries that went towards socialism, socialism has always been pushed by the elite. If the country goes towards socialism, it's being pushed by the elites. I mean, I can't think of any country that went towards socialism that did not have wealth.
And not just that, but all the leaders of those countries were educated in the West.
Yes. And indeed, socialism is a type of feudalism. On this, I agree again with you. But that's what I said earlier. Socialism is basically trying to create a new upper class, with the socialists being the upper class.
Yeah. It's a way of people who are essentially valueless to get themselves some kind of value. Instead of, earning and getting genuine value in society. It's, oh, we'll do it through pushing the good of others, even though it's totally self-serving and counterproductive to the people they claim to want to help.
But it is not something we just see in wealthy countries. I understand what Alicia is saying, but between a wealthy country and a wealthy country, there might be a difference. Because, for example, if we look at Zimbabwe, Zimbabwe was a rich country. It wasn't with wealthy people, but it was a rich country. What destroyed it? Socialism.
Yeah, but there was wealth to redistribute.
Yeah.
There was a capitalist system which should create a wealth for them to covet.
And this is happening in South Africa. This is happening in so many other countries. You don't, I mean, between being rich and being rich, there's a world of difference. But if there is something to redistribute, that's the thing. That's the thing with capitalism. Capitalism raises the bar. A poor person in the Western world out-earns or out-owns a middle-class person in third world countries. If we look at Europe, if we look at America, even I'm not talking about the homeless. The homeless is a category in itself. But even if we look at people who aren't rich, they still have a television. They still have running water. They still have fridges. They still have internet.
They don't go naked. They don't have,
which in itself is.
Yeah, it's a vast improvement on the vast majority of people 150 years ago.
Oh yeah, our poor now are wealthy compared to the poor in the past. William Carson, you want to say something, mate? Because I see that you wish you could write faster so you would be able to put your thoughts out.
Maybe you could say it.
Yeah, if you want, you may join us. And yes, indeed, Crusader Soul, Zimbabwe and South Africa now, they kicked out their farmers, which is kind of weird considering that they're always struggling to feed their people. But that's okay, because if they can't feed the people, they will just eat the people. It's not me saying that. Their politicians actually said that. South Africa is not afraid that they will starve because there are enough people around. Fuck's sake. I have to look it up again.
Yes,
yes,
but no.
Yes, but no to what, mate?
Enigmatic.
Yeah, but no. Listen, if you want, you can join. If you don't want, you don't have to. And now it's quiet again. Yeah, but this is.
Sorry, can I just address a point Alicia made? Okay. Alicia referred to Plato.
Plato. Slightly different.
Not a Disney dog. Not a Disney dog, but very, very famous ancient Greek.
Yes, Pluto, that ancient. Oh, this is going to bite you, mate.
The thing is Athenian democracy was a very exceptional time, a time of freedom in what was generally not a era of freedom. And it is interesting that it was at that time in that place that what she says is the precursor of socialism came about. And yet strangely, and she mentioned Rome. Yes, I am not unfamiliar with what happened in Rome, and that was thanks to slavery, unfortunately.
Well, it was not just.
No. But what happened was at the time of the Republic, the troops were granted land and they became smallholders.
Yeah.
And over the centuries of the empire, slavery became more and more of an economic force, and the wealthy had bigger and bigger estates and essentially priced the smallholders out of the market. And so the state had to intervene to feed people because it doesn't like people rioting. And that is very redolent of what is happening today. She is right. But where was the socialism between the fall of Rome and the rise of industrialization? That is between the wealth of the Roman Empire and the wealth introduced by capitalism. So when I say it's a product of capitalism, as I say, the wealth that capitalism produces, as in that is the current paradigm, not that is the only paradigm, but it is a product of what I'm saying is if you didn't have capitalism, societies would degenerate and there wouldn't be any motivation to be socialist because there'd be nothing to co-opt.
Yeah, and that's the thing, though. If we look at, for example, the Roman Empire, and yes, I know people didn't call it socialism back then, and maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. But what we did see is that the Roman government started handing out things.
Yes,
which
they had a huge population and nothing for them to do.
Yeah, which then caused basically the devaluation of their money, which then caused people not to be able to pay their taxes, which then caused more people to become poor, which then caused the government to be forced to feed more people, which basically is the collapse of the West Roman Empire.
It's interesting because Alicia's now saying Native Americans have socialism, Africa has socialism, because that ties in. That ties in with a lot of the people. I only hear rumors because I haven't seen it directly, talking about how we should go back to a more, those kinds of societies.
Yeah, but they didn't have socialism.
And that's the question. So what Alicia's calling socialism, you and I would not call socialism. But again, that's a semantic argument because what she's saying is correct if we use different words for our own understanding. But yes, she's correct.
There is a big difference between what they had and what socialism wants. Because if we look at Native American societies, they were tribal.
And society on that level can function in a fundamentally different way from society on the modern state.
And tribalism is not socialism, because in a tribe you can lift up a few people that can't work for whatever reason.
It's the evolutionary environment motives, in which we evolved.
Yeah.
And that is why so many of our modern psychological traits still exist.
I'm sorry, Alicia. The Chippewa did not have socialism. What they had was a social society, but that's not the same thing. And that's the whole thing about this. Is something it's too bad that Carlos isn't here now, because he would absolutely love to make this point. This is why he is such a fan of hunter-gathering societies, because there is no free handout, but there are people who can do less because we help each other.
Yeah, but this is again one of the problems with terminology. Is I fundamentally agree with what Alicia was saying, but as you say, Modwain, when we are referring to modern socialism, that is not what we're talking about.
Yeah, unfortunately, Alicia had to go. So
no, I'm saying, but you understand. It's like, it's so when she says, "Oh no, socialism doesn't have capitalism," that's only because she has a fundamentally different conception of what socialism is.
Yeah,
which is where we started.
Semantics. Davey, you are completely correct. According to Carlos, there was egalitarian healthcare. There was.
Yeah, well,
The thing is,
essentially, cooperation is the norm.
no, but this is
In
not the point.
evolutionary time, cooperation and mutual support was the norm because in a tribe you had to.
Yeah, because there's no one else. And today I carry you, and tomorrow you carry me.
You
That's
live
how
and
it
die
works.
together as a whole,
Yeah.
as a unit.
But according to Carlos, there was egalitarian healthcare. Yes, there was, but that was because everyone had the same healthcare. It was crap, but everyone had the same. It can't get more egalitarian than that. And that's the thing. Our society has always been pushing forward. And with it, we could go into totalitarian regimes like feudalism, which is, in all fairness, totalitarian, or we could go into free societies. Capitalism is an economic model for a free society.
Yeah.
Socialism is an economic and political model for a totalitarian regime.
Again, it depends how you define socialism, and there are those who would disagree with your definition. And I merely say that for clarity. You see, in his video today, I know you haven't seen it, Grim points out that what you call socialism, he calls communism.
Well, fair enough. The goal
And
of
socialism is something
communism.
else. And all I'm saying is I'm just trying to point out that there are these semantic problems, and the solution, goodness knows, but it's difficult. You see, when I was introduced to, let's call it Marxism, whatever, when people said the workers own the means of production, the workers also didn't want a state. Therefore, it was a contradiction in terms to have state ownership of anything, let alone the means of production.
Mm-hmm.
So to be a socialist, how could you want the state to own anything? You're anti-state. And yet, as you say, socialism can also mean the state ownership. But the state ownership is just an extreme form of elite ownership.
Yeah,
And the
it is a
fun,
form of elite. And socialism is.
and
the system
Dave is
set out
saying the
for
difference
elite.
is irrelevant, and I agree. But I'm not talking about something practical. I was just having a conception, and at the time, the conception was, you know, it's like when you say the workers own the means of production, it means the workers literally. If you work in a factory, you own the means of production collectively in the factory.
Mm-hmm.
With me, like a workers' cooperative. You don't. It doesn't belong to anybody else. It doesn't mean you don't have competition. It doesn't mean you don't have markets. It just means there aren't external shareholders, investors owning it all. And I don't say this as that would work, because it wouldn't. I'm just saying that was my conception of it. And that's why, you know, you get these very different understandings of what socialism and the left is, because you get the individualist, people own it, bottom up socialist, and you get the state owns it and it's all collective and everyone has to do what they're told, as in the Soviet Union, socialist. And the left in the 1980s, who supported Solidarność against the communists in Poland and who hated the Soviet Union, were of the individualist bottom-up persuasion.
Yeah, but the difference between Solidarność and socialism is that Solidarność is not, well, it wasn't about socialism.
Who said I didn't compare Solidarność? I said that the socialists of the 80s supported them against the communists.
Well, some, not all.
No, all. In Britain, all.
Okay.
In Britain, all. It was overwhelming. And because the left in those days was anti-state, it was individualist, or at least large parts of it were.
Yeah, the left was anti-state. That is correct.
And that's what I'm trying to say. So you have the two strands of leftism. You have the individualist, we'd just happen to be together for strength in numbers, and you have the, oh no, somebody should tell us all what to do, SJW type leftist.
No, I understand what you mean, and it's this is kind of funny because if we look at it in America, one of the reasons that there is this movement away from the Democratic Party is because even a lot of Democrats recognize the difference between what the way they want to be left and the way the Democratic Party is becoming left.
Because what is termed left and right are, as I said a lot earlier, essentially being determined on the wrong basis.
True that.
And that's what I'm saying.
You can't look at purely left or right anymore because it never really had any meaning, but the meaning has dwindled even further.
You see, Crusader Souls, the left want communism and the right want individual, and that is factually incorrect. There are a lot of people on the left who are very individualist, and there are people on the right who are very collectivist.
Yeah, but the way they are collectivist may be different.
It doesn't matter.
No, it has an influence though.
No, it doesn't matter if you're an authoritarian, you're a collectivist. I'm sorry, I don't want to know. And I don't care whether you call yourself left, right, whether the bloody Nazis were right, left, or as somebody suggested recently, in the middle. Who cares? They're collectivists.
Well, they were collectivists. That is true.
Yeah, and the communists, collectivists, don't want to know.
What do you mean? Don't want to know?
Don't want to know about them. They can fuck off and die.
Well, they did.
That's what I'm saying. You know, and all these people, California or whatever. You know, it's like no. You know,
no, I understand what you mean on that, though.
You know, and the point is there are people on the left who identify as a left who are fundamentally against state authoritarianism, who are socially libertarian.
Yeah, but then again, that is the real thing. Are we talking about being totalitarian, or are we talking about being individuals? And socialism is always talking about being totalitarian. There is no socialism without totalitarianism. Now, there are other systems that are the same, because if we look at, for example, fascism, there is no fascism without totalitarianism.
Yeah.
But then again,
it's that authoritarianism, totalitarianism, that is the problem.
Yeah. But at the same time, this is also the problem of any political system. If you have career politicians, you will turn into totalitarianism. That's why I don't understand why most countries didn't say, okay, you know what? You're allowed to work in politics for a certain point of time, period. Not just you're only allowed to be a president for 2 terms. No. You're only allowed 3 terms in the Senate, for example. That way you prevent the career politicians.
Yeah. Well, you know what they say. Anyone who seeks power is unfit to hold it.
True that. I totally agree with that. The best leaders are the ones that are leaders because they are reluctant, but someone has to.
Well, you see, like in the Roman Republic, they had the twin, what they call them, consuls.
Yeah.
And they only had a year each.
Yep.
They only had a year. And you know, it's like you think what you need is like, you know, like for jury duty, you have a public lottery, and then everyone just gets a year at random, public service. You get to run.
Yeah, there's something. No, you're correct.
No, it's not serious. The fundamental problem is, it's like in Germany, one of the reasons for the success of their economy is their economic model. Banks partner with businesses and they develop very long-term plans. 25 years is not uncommon. No. In Britain, a company will be on the stock market and it has to perform in 6 months. And in America, it's 3 months. How the hell can you plan for the future when you've got to maintain your performance every quarter?
Yeah.
You know, if you are sacked from the board because you've got this long-term plan and it just requires a dip and then a rise, and you'd be much better off in 25 years. And let's be honest, most investors would be more than happy to see the benefits of 25 years. But no, they want it then. They want it now, and you must never dip. And the two things are incompatible.
Yeah.
No. And it's the same with politics. You know, a politician comes in and the solution will see dividends in 25 years, but nothing for 23 years. No one's going to do that. How's that going to get him elected?
Yeah, there is a problem within that system, and I don't see it happening, but it would be nice if politicians themselves would say, okay, you know what, there is a limit into what we do. And it's
but they know there's a limit, but they can't say it. That's the problem.
Yeah,
it's
but
like an open secret.
They don't mind saying it for other people, but they definitely don't want to say it about themselves.
You know, I mean, as I say, it's a career now.
Yeah, and I can understand advisors being a career. I cannot understand politicians being.
Nothing at Lou.
You think of what?
Nothing at Lou. In the chat, sorry.
Yeah, leprechaunism. Okay. Sorry. Anyway, considering it's almost 1:30, 2:30. It's almost 1:30. So we've been busy for 2 hours.
Yeah. It's funny. He says, Davey says, they're sick of the Labour Tory deadlock. I honestly think that if we shut down the Houses of Parliament, it would only improve the situation.
But yeah, that's the thing. I mean, people like to think that politics are that important, but in all fairness, the country will continue without politicians.
Well, look at those countries with Germany for how many months?
Yeah.
Italy for how many months?
The Netherlands. We had what, 8-9 months no government.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not true because the sitting ministers will keep doing their job. Yeah, but what is their job? There were no new laws made. Nothing.
Exactly. No new laws. God, I wish a party would stand up. We won't do any new laws. We'll just get rid of loads.
Which is good. It's good that they don't get any new laws.
And it's that I'm not popular enough. Otherwise, I would maybe have made work of trying to get into politics myself. But I'm not popular enough.
Give me a second. I'll be.
It's kind of funny though, because in the UK they're actually making laws to prevent YouTubers to go into politics. What the fuck?
Online trolls.
Incredible. Still there, John?
I think he's going AFK.
Huh?
I think he said he is going AFK for a second.
I wanted to close that. Can't close down when he's not here. That's rude.
Yeah. Then we just wait. Keep talking.
Yeah, I can understand that, Crusader. They seem to be a nice party. Oh, don't worry, Davy. They're rushing to get Ireland back into the 14th century next. What with the open borders and all that. I wouldn't say pot is a medicine, but you can use it as such. Then again, alcohol can be used as a medicine as well. I'm not in favor of pot. I'm just not against it either. I just can't be asked. It's just you have to you have to remember what you're doing when you're using substances. You have to respect what you're doing. Yes, fair enough, Davy. Fair enough. 6th century. Yes. You're correct there, though.
Yeah, well, I'm a social libertarian, so I believe in decriminalising all drugs for adults. If you want to kill yourself, go ahead. If you don't, fine. But it should be, you know, first, the biggest problem is the drugs trade, the criminals, you know, and all that.
Yeah, but the criminals are only effective because of criminalization.
Yeah, that's what I said. So you decriminalize it.
Yeah, decriminalize will
you decriminalize it. I'm not saying you legalize it, but you decriminalize it. You stop it being an offense and you regulate.
Well, you can legalize it. I don't care about that. And listen, if you legalize it, you can actually ask taxes over it. Yeah, I mean, we legalized alcohol and we legalized tobacco. So
petrol. For some people, driving a car is a drug.
Yeah, and you actually.
Well, it was sugar.
But you can also have better standards about it. Like in Poland, it's really it's scary to buy it because you never know what you're really getting.
Yeah, you don't always cut with exactly. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, yawning.
I mean, at the end of the day, what do they call it? Prohibition never works.
No, there hasn't been a period of time that prohibition worked. That is correct.
All you can do is make it safe and educate people.
Prohibition in America was even worse than a lot of people recognize. The American government contaminated alcohol. People actually died from drinking contaminated alcohol.
But it's worse than that because they then went and did it again with drugs.
Yep.
The war on drugs is like, we didn't learn the lesson the first time. We're going to do the same shit again.
But by actually legalizing it, you have more control over a legalized substance than over an illegal substance.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day,
the criminals.
You know, Davey's saying about prostitution or gambling or anything. If people want to do it, they will do it.
True that. Anyway, before we start all over again, I'm sorry, people. My 2-hour limit is coming up close. So we're going to call it quits for tonight. I would like to thank everyone for joining us. I hope you enjoyed the little heated debate John and I had. I do think we said a lot of interesting things, and I'm grateful for everyone in the chat partaking. And I hope to see you all next week. Yes, Ludicrous, it was fun. John, you have any last words? No. Finishing words? Maybe better than last words.
Are you trying to get rid of me? Goodbye, you cruel world. It's over.
That's why I changed myself. That's why I corrected myself.
I will go.
Damn, mate. You're almost a woman now, for fuck's sake.
I'm a what?
Yeah, you heard me right.
I don't mind being called a woman. There's nothing wrong with that, but it sounds very odd.
Anyway, do you have anything to say to finish off this stream?
The end.
Okay. You're not contemplating coming back with your
I contemplate many things.
Right. Fair point.
I am not in a good place for doing.
Son, do you have anything to say?
quiet.
Yeah, sorry, it got me a little bit too long to get my mic back on. No, thanks all for coming. Yes, it was funny, at least the parts I could really hear. Yeah, that's it. Thanks for coming. I hope it was also fun for you guys.
Yeah, Real Raven's got the best last words. Fuck this gay earth.
Yeah.
Well suggested,
Anyway,
mate.
it's nice for you to join us, Real Raven, at the very end. But yeah, no, we're going to call it quits now, and I hope to see you all next week. And then I have to press this button to say goodbye. Oh, I have to wait. Why do I have to wait? Why do I have to wait?
Don't.
Oh, I don't have to wait. Anyway, guys, thank you all for coming, and I hope to see you all next week.